Oops, started the wrong video there. How are you? I am Dr. Annette Feravich. Not that you could respond to me. I don't know why I say, how are you? We are here in the classroom. This is the reading room, day 192. Let's go ahead and get started with reading our Being Catholic Now. If you haven't seen, I have a new little holder. Although I really don't like that in there. It just makes it look horrible because that's so cute. All right, so check out all my classes. I have DIYs, I have suggestions. Check out all my classes. We do a lot in the classroom. Even though we cut down the schedule, I'm getting old. Let's go ahead and read our Being Catholic Now by Kerry Kennedy. I believe there's 37 different excerpts here. And today we are reading from Lucas Benitez. Lucas Benitez. Interesting picture. Let's see what he has to say and who he is. Lucas Benitez, born November 23rd, 1975, is a 32-year-old farm worker and the founder and co-director of the Coalition of Immokalee Workers, which stops exploitation of farm workers and has emancipated over 1,000 people from slavery in the United States over the past decade. What are you talking about? Wow. He received the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Award in recognition of his courageous work fighting modern-day slavery and for his leadership of the National Taco Bell boycott, which ended victoriously in 2005 with the first increase in wages for tomato pickers since 1978. Benitez takes inspiration from Jesus in his work to liberate the world. That's amazing. That's amazing. Wow. Just a young man. Younger than me. My family is Catholic. My grandmother, my grandparents, they taught their religion to my parents, and my father worked 7 days a week when I was young in Mexico. I came from a big family, 5 brothers and 1 sister. My father worked in the fields and construction, but every Sunday he worked only half a day, from 7 o'clock in the morning until 12 o'clock. He'd come home, tell everybody to take a bath, and then we'd go to 6 p.m. Mass. Every Sunday we went to church, and afterward we'd have time with my father to go to the little plaza. My father bought us cookies and ice cream. Sunday was special because it was the only day our entire family spent time together. We always had a big dinner. You know, it does make sense that there can be all kinds of things in a family's life, different ages, right, that would bring about different events that would keep a family from being able to sit together at dinner. I was very disappointed in that with all the rigorous expectations of what should just be sports for kids, right? Fun sports, but it wasn't. It was so rigorous. It was horrible, horrible. Then they had to do the 2-a-days and then 3-a-days. Are you kidding me? What are you, some Nazi trainer? I mean, granted, it was high school, but that's just ridiculousness for the disproportionate amount of money that is spent in gambling and on sports figures, figuratively and literally. We lived in a really small one-room home. We all slept together on the floor here, gestures, and the kitchen was right there, points, separately by a door. So he's being interviewed. We had running water 1 or 2 times a week, but we'd gather water in buckets and bathe every day before going to school. We never ate meat on Fridays during Lent. Throughout Holy Week in Mexico, we did nothing in the mornings and didn't eat at all from dinner until lunch the next day. See, that kind of tradition and ceremony passes down tradition, but legends and stories and storytelling opportunities for questions, which is what I was going to say, the first thing, right? So those kinds of things allows for questions and the passing down of the stories and things maybe where somebody might ask you a question that you forgot about in the story, right? Because it's being seen through fresh eyes. Love it. I think that the Catholics have really taken on a whole new, especially, given the fact that as a believer in Christ, I have been railroaded as well with false stories for the purpose of monetary gains. So it could happen to anybody, anytime. I don't know. But the infiltration of the church does seem, at the very least, feasible. Okay. 2, separate the wheat from the chaff. But I love that tradition, I really do. I mean, if you had a whole house of people who did nothing in the mornings throughout Holy Week, and didn't eat at all from dinner until lunch the next day, which, isn't much of a sacrifice for me. But if I were doing it with the whole family, it would be fun. If it were a real sacrifice, it would be torture for me. I think I give up enough. I really don't like sacrificing more than I already have. I haven't had my children by me for 5 years, and I said that without crying, which makes me want to cry. But, sometimes I can control it. My mother said we needed to sacrifice something because Jesus sacrificed his life for us. On Good Friday, we made a procession through the streets and prayed to images of the saints. Now, that's kind of tough to swallow right there, Catholics. Then we'd go home. We weren't allowed to play music for the entire week. Now, that would be torture for me. We had to pay for, but something I could do. It wouldn't be torture, like not eating right? That whole thing, I just can't wrap my brain around. It's hard for me to wrap my brain around fasting and eating. Eating isn't that important to me. But if I go to the refrigerator and want a piece of cheese, I want a piece of cheese. It's just, and I wouldn't think about it. I just wouldn't think about it. Where other things, like giving up music, I would think about. I would think about it and end up not doing it because I would think about it in advance. And it would be hard for me to give up music for a whole week. But I could do it. I have the house silent a lot of times. But it's, like a 3 days of music on 1 day off, 1 day back on, 1 day off, then 3. I think that's the pattern. I'm not sure. We had to pay for the sins of the year. On Saturday of Glory, my mother always had an altar at home with all the images of saints. And when the glory opened so Jesus would go to heaven, we'd kneel down together and pray. No comprende. When did that happen? When did the glory open? And you know what I want to say right there, because that's weird. That's a weird statement. My parents would ask, are you repentant for all your sins? Do you promise to behave better this year? And we would say yes. And they'd bless us, and we'd leave one by one after they blessed us. What a wonderful cleansing of sins, isn't it? To give the idea constantly that God is a forgiving God, but you have to say you're repentant, right? And I would imagine there's a little bit more talking if a parent sees a child not repenting. But this family that takes you out and makes sure that you have a day together as a family once a week, you know that those parents, whatever they're doing, sounds to me like they're trying to really, really do good. So I said it in a kind of stern voice. Are you repentant for all your sins? I loved that. I might have done that with the kids, but then I would forget things, you know. Some things work now. Some things worked then. Some things will work better. And that's a bit of truth that you just glossed over. I wasn't reading that. That was from me. On Sunday, we'd go to Mass together. One of my favorite parts from the Bible is when Jesus found the temple was being used as a market and he threw everybody out. Jesus, the Son of God, was a person who liked justice and wanted people to have equality. Many Catholics don't want to see the reality of Jesus, but Jesus was with the poor, and that is what led me to what I'm doing now. Jesus was liberating his people from oppression. We all have Jesus in ourselves, and we have to do whatever we can to liberate this world. That is what inspires me to continue. And that's what I pray that my boys got out of our teachings. I know I read this to them. I know I told them that this is what I wanted them to be and to do. And that I would be an example or whatever it took for them to be those people who understood Catholicism was for justice, social justice, and what that meant was that they were for the poor. And that was important to Catholics, whether or not they stayed Catholics because they believed that the Catholicism stayed true to that, which for a big part in my area of Oakland County, they did not. They did not stay true to that idea that Catholics are for social justice, and that meant tending to the poor. They were always about, Catholics at St. William were always about, if you were poor, it was because you didn't do anything about your circumstances, despite the fact that we have hours and hours of my presentations, of my teachings, of how people were literally getting expressions of railroading from the railroad industry. Literally getting expressions of husband from husbandry in the 1800s, which meant if I want a piece of land, I better grab myself a wife and start boning her to have kids that I can feed so I can keep this land. While the spinster banks are like, oh, and that reminds me of, when you're right here in Immokalee and see the injustice, you want to change it. When we started, I was working in the fields picking tomatoes with other farm workers. We started talking about the job and how it's difficult and how much money we were making. And somebody said, "You're making money?" When I arrived here, I worked and made nothing. He went on, "The agriculture worker employers have people to watch us, and these people have arms, guns. At 4 o'clock in the morning, we're forced to work. I escaped from there. You hear different stories." In the early 1990s, so what was that, right? What was that rounding up of Native Americans by Southern Confederates? Just their own justice of manifest destiny and slavery. Basically saying, yeah, call yourselves whatever you want to call yourself. I call myself a Jacksonian. That's what they were saying. I do not, as you know. In the early 1900s, I was working full-time in the field, and we started the morning meetings by the CIW, the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. My brother and I talked to our co-workers and to Greg and Laura from Florida Rural Legal Services. They were really interested in the situation, and they talked to the farm workers, took notes, and interviewed people. Then Greg and Laura took statements about what was happening in the Florida fields to the people in the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. And the guys at Justice said, "This isn't happening here in the United States. Are you crazy?" So they came back from Washington to Immokalee, and we gathered evidence and took the case to Miami. The FBI to interview the victim. The FBI sent an agent around 10 o'clock in the morning. He said, "I'm here to interview the victims." So I said, "But they're working right now." He said, "I don't have time to wait. I need to leave Immokalee by 3 to be in Miami by 5. So he left. After a lot of work to convince government officials, one lawyer in the Justice Department became interested in the case and started to investigate. Finally, in 1997, the FBI arrested the perpetrators, and they were sentenced to 15 years for slavery. 400 farm workers were fired. Since then, we've taken other cases and freed more people. There was one priest who was very close to the farm workers, and he helped people to escape, but he was a very naive person. He didn't know what to do with these people. He was really happy to have rescued them from this situation, but he didn't keep in contact, so we couldn't find them to help prosecute the case. Today, the church plays a very important role. The church gives us sanctuary, as they should. Sometimes when we've rescued people, federal agencies place them in jail for a week or two as witnesses. They say they're protecting the victims, but that is crazy. Instead, CIW brings them to a safe house so they can return to work and live in the community. The best therapy for farm workers is to start to work and send money to Mexico, because that is why they came here. One of the victims said, "It's like I've come out of darkness into light." The Catholic Church provided one of the safe houses. The church has helped us a lot. Bravo, Catholic Church. Bravo, Catholic Church. Bravo. There are some really great people in the Catholic Church. There are really great people there. When we organized the general strike, Bishop John Nevin of the Diocese of Venice, Florida, was really interested. When we started the hunger strike, he became more involved. He came to Immokalee. He called the Archdiocese, and through the Bishop of Baltimore, for the first time, the Cardinal came to meet with the people taking part in the hunger strike. This gave us hope. We knew we were not alone. Now the Catholic Church is more involved. During the Taco Bell boycott, we traveled to California and went on a 10-day hunger strike. I remember that, and that was a big reason for me to stop eating at Taco Bell. Although my kids did not. I'd have to think about the year. Maybe they weren't involved in it at all because they weren't eating Taco Bell. They didn't start eating Taco Bell till they were able to buy it and purchase it with their own money. And then I felt that that was their right. But I had forgotten about that whole strike thing too. It was just bad. You know, it was processed food. Cardinal Mahoney asked us to stop saying he committed himself and his parish to support our struggle. It was nearing Lent, and so out of respect, we agreed. The Cardinal got more involved. He sent a letter to Taco Bell's CEO, as did Bishop Soto from Orange County, as well as other people from the church. The priest in Immokalee right now, Father Hector Rubin, is amazing. He supports the CIW work. He led a 3,000 person march we organized in Immokalee, where almost 80% of the people are Catholic. For us, the priest symbolizes peace. I believe that I'll go to heaven to be with God. It's a place where you'll be at rest, where you'll have time for the things you don't have time for here on earth. You aren't here physically anymore, so you might be an angel. There are hundreds of angels taking care of us, protecting us. My grandmother from my father's side, the only one I met, my grandfather from my mother's side, will take me on their laps. Sometimes I feel their presence. I've been in harm's way in risky situations many times, and everybody has been okay. Somebody is protecting and watching over me. It's not a place to go and rest, but you'll be peaceful. If I were Pope, I'd carry the message of hope. I'd support the most noble and just causes. I'd help poor people produce things so they could support themselves. I'd help causes like ours in the CIW to fight against exploitation. The Pope has a strong voice against walls that are being built between countries and to end unfair and unjust wars. The few leaders we have had been taken away. I'd raise my voice and end injustice in this world. The few leaders we had have been taken away. Guilt is when you do an evil thing and you don't apologize, or when you bear rancor against someone who has harmed you. All the people that I think I hate after all these years of struggle, I've learned to love them. When we went on the 10-day hunger strike against Taco Bell, I was really angry with the CEO, and after that, we met Jonathan Blum, then vice president of Yum Brands, parent company of Taco Bell, and I thought, this is a person and people are afraid. He has to defend his job, and at the end, you see that everybody has this feeling of doing the just thing. I don't go to church every Sunday because of my work. To practice your religion, you don't have to be physically in church every Sunday. I haven't felt far away from my religion because I'm always close to my saints, and also this cross and medal with the Virgin Mary around my neck. It's always with me whenever I go. I'm always reminded of them. I believe I'm fulfilling on earth what I was sent for by God. The bishop told me, you're doing the work God wants you to do, giving voice to people who don't have it. That is why we've recognized your work, and you're the image of God. Wow, what a wonderful thing to say here on earth. You're the image of God. God says, what is it? Oh my gosh, I can't remember when the clouds part and he calls Jesus his beloved son. And he's like, basically he says, I'm proud of you, my beloved son, but he doesn't say I'm proud of you. I can't remember. The next one is Eloise May Thames. Let's see how long she is. Oh, she's pretty short. Let's read. Oh, she's really short. Let's read Eloise. She's very short. Even her little biography is short. Eloisa May Thames is a freshman at the College of St. Catherine in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She is considering becoming a nun. One would think you would have more to say. There she is. It's really interesting to me, these devout, follow the straight path Catholics that have sometimes the least to say in here. I turned 19 3 days ago. I was born in Georgia and lived in Louisiana and then Missouri. I went to a Montessori school through 9th grade and a Catholic high school. Right now, I'm a freshman at St. Catherine's. When I was little, I used to get bored at church. When you're 5 or 6, you're like, when is it over? Why are we here? But in 1st and 2nd grade, I started to think about my faith and ask questions. Then when I started going to the parish school religion program. As I grew older, I began to appreciate and enjoy Mass. I don't like to go to Mass here on campus because this church is too liberal for me. People stand during convocation while I usually kneel as a sign of respect. I don't feel comfortable. In His holiness, the priest avoids talking about God and Jesus like he's stepping on eggshells trying not to offend anyone. If you're going to Mass on Sunday in a Catholic church and you don't believe those things, why are you there? My roommate and I have decided to go to Mass at my grandma's church. The priest there preaches the gospel through what the church believes. That's kind of like my sister. She didn't like the liberal masses. I don't know. You know, Catholic churches kept out the guitar mass for those because many churches thought that was, they didn't keep it out, but churches could keep it out because they thought it was too liberal. They wouldn't have it at my church over there in Fremont, where I grew up. Last summer, I worked in a lab doing chromosome analysis, and when the ballot initiative came up, I thought it was offensive that many people assumed I voted for stem cell research. They didn't take my morals into account. As a Catholic, I believe there are certain lines that shouldn't be crossed, and when you mention the word stem cell research, people automatically go to amniotic. But that's not the only option. I know a couple of people who have been cured by their own adult stem cells, one with Hodgkin's lymphoma. There are options that don't involve the dissection of life. Those need to be explored and researched more before we decide. With regard to birth control, abstinence, of course, is the best way to prevent any unplanned children from being born. Beyond that, I'm a big advocate of natural family planning. Of course, you can't plan things exactly all the time, but having a little more control over when you have a family helps. I agree with the church's ban on condom use. If you're in a marriage, you have to be open to life when you share that love and engage in those marital acts. When one spouse has HIV, you are putting the other spouse's life in danger. In this case, the couple should abstain from sexual intercourse because if they really love each other, they wouldn't want to impose HIV on the person they love. It sounds like I could have said these things too, but that would have been at a certain period where you think a certain way and much younger than my experiences now. When you engage in that intimate act, you must give yourself fully, your soul, your everything. You can't hold something back. You must be open to that life. If you can't do something naturally, then you don't do it at all. I have a genetic disorder called tremor syndrome. To stay healthy, I have to take estrogen. For me, it's not birth control because I can't have children. So there's no chance that I would be destroying a life in preserving my own health. I've come to terms with the fact that I can't have children and my husband and I are going to have to adopt. Women have come a long way in the church. We're able to serve as lecturers and Eucharistic ministers, but you want to be a nun and then you can't have a husband. No comprendo. When I was an altar server, I had good experiences, but I don't know how I feel about women priests. There are different ways for men and women to serve, but still equal. Being a priest or being a religious sister are very equal, but just different ways of serving. I'm not one who easily goes along with change. When I was 14 or 15, I suffered from anorexia. I went to a faith-based treatment center because there's no way anyone could come out of a depression like that without God's help. When you're in recovery, it's like you're starting a new life. It's so freeing. You feel rejuvenated, and I want to give back this second chance, this new life, to the one who gave it to me, to God. The first thing that came to mind is becoming a sister. I'm still discerning this vocation. Am I really called? All right, that's all that Eloisa May Thames had to say. So we will be reading from Dan Aykroyd. Dan Aykroyd when I come back tomorrow for our 3 days on. We're done with our first of 3, day 192 in the classroom. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. I'm the teacher. Thanks so much for joining me here in the classroom.